Hi everybody, my name is Matt Hopkins. I'm here today at this show with two brands, Vertical Leap, a search specialist, and Red Rocket Media, which is a social media and content marketing specialist. So we can see that when we're at stand C39, I have to make sure I say that, which is just over there. And obviously, if you consider those two brands, I'm here to talk to you about the convergence of SEO, content marketing, and social media marketing, and how when you combine those three, you end up with more than the sum of their parts. But I really want to talk about some other stuff. When I started doing this presentation, I got distracted, and so I think there's some things that I want to go through first that doesn't get talked about very much, but I hope it puts the other elements into perspective. It seems everybody here and everybody in marketing generally is focused on this, the to-do list, what to do, all the activities, the editorial calendar, all the channels that we need to do. And I feel that they're going through the motions without fully understanding why they're doing what they're doing. And sometimes perhaps with a skewed view of how to go about what we're doing as well. And there's a lot of information out there, but it generally tends to be all about the how and the what. You know, all the 6 different ways to improve your email marketing and 5 different ways to do this and all that kind of stuff. And so I just want to first start this conversation talking about why and move in a little bit to the how, because we all seem to be pretty good, or fairly good at least, at the what. Also, I'm nursing a cold, so if I cough, I'll try to cover up the mic, so I apologize in advance. All right, it all starts here. To really understand where we are and the why, we need to understand these two different things, search and discovery. These the two ways, the two behaviors that customers use to find you, your products and your services, search and discovery. We search to satisfy need, and yes, bacon sometimes is a need. It's a basic motivation in the buying cycle. It's not going away. Sometimes you hear people talking about social replacing search, which simply isn't going to happen. It's comparing apples to oranges. Search is a behavior. It's not Google or Bing. It is a behavior. We might search on social by asking our friends and followers for some advice or a question about a particular restaurant or whatever. And we all know that Google and Microsoft and Facebook more recently with their graph search are trying to integrate more search services into social. And conversely, search engines are trying to integrate more social into their search. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the basics of what we're trying to do here, and that is search. And searching on social works pretty well for some key topics, specifically those with local information, local knowledge, local restaurants, travel tips, perhaps job hunting, that kind of stuff. But let me tell you about the big flaw in this really big move to mining my social graph or to leverage my social network. And you see this ever-increasing push to hyper-personalization. And that's this. I am not my friends. That's me on the far left there in 1987, just for some comic relief. You can barely see it. I'm not my friends. You know, my friends, we all have different religious and political beliefs, and we have different tastes and opinions in products and services as well. And so just because my friends like to go, I don't know, camping on camping holidays doesn't necessarily mean that I do. Just because my friends like Android and hate everything about Apple doesn't necessarily mean that I do. And just because a friend of mine just bought a particular, large TV of a certain brand doesn't mean that I want the same, right? There's a serious flaw in the logic that just because the people I'm friends with are just like me, right? And this is where I think social searching reaches its limit. It has its benefits, but this big push will reach its limit. And the type of search that we're used to, the Google that we're used to, will not go away completely, right? Will it be done more on a mobile device? Perhaps, absolutely, with more local intent. but it won't go away. Video does not kill the radio star here, right? And birds of a feather, I read this today, birds of a feather flock together. This is the argument for social search. That's not necessarily true, I don't think. Birds of a feather do not necessarily flock together. Search is as important today, even in this very social world, as it ever was. In fact, perhaps more so. People have become excellent researchers, and they're typically 60 to 90% through their buying cycle before they even contact a company about a product or service. They've searched for competing service providers or products. They've read reviews. They've even read your blog, perhaps, and yes, perhaps they've even asked their friends and followers. They've conducted a social search. You know, in fact, I saw this survey the other day. It said 9 out of 10 B2B buyers actually want to receive your information if it will help them make an informed choice. So they're doing all this hard work for you, perhaps. But at the end of the day, they're searching, right? They're looking to scratch an itch or to satisfy a need. That's search. But the biggest shift in media and in marketing is with discovery. Not necessarily the channel. I just couldn't find a decent graphic here. And if search happens when you need, if search happens when you have a need, discovery is all about serendipity, right? If I'm reading a magazine, either a physical magazine in the olden days of 2 years ago or the Zinio app on my iPad today, and I come across this amazing article about a set of goggles that keep me from tearing up when I chop onions. You know, I didn't even know they existed. I didn't go out looking for it, but I hate when my eyes sort of tear up when I chop onions, so I have to have a set, right? That's discovery, finding the unexpected and the unknown. And so the big shift, and I mean huge shift really, is that discovery used to be the sole domain of magazines and newspapers and TV, aka traditional media. And so in order to get your products discovered, you needed to spend a ton of money on advertising or advertorial or with PR agencies to get the right kind of exposure in these publications. But guess where discovery lives now? More and more, certainly, and perhaps always. Social media. People are sharing products they find useful. They're sharing reviews. They're sharing leaks about products even, right? All on social media networks. And this is when my social graph starts to really make a difference. The people who I follow or the people who follow me really starts to have influence. Because today you don't necessarily need to be in a magazine to get discovered. I will read articles and other content shared by the people I follow on Twitter with little regard to the source of those articles, right? It's the person who shared the article that has credibility. It doesn't matter if that onion goggle review came from the New York Times or one of your own blogs. If I read it and from somebody who has influence or perceived influence over me, then I will read it and I will take it and I will probably share it as well. And so this means that you can now be the source for all that content if you want to be. Your website can become that magazine. You just need to make sure that what you're producing is share-worthy and it's getting seen by other people. And so search and discovery are not the same. They are simply two different ways, two different behaviors of how people find your products, right? Two different sides of the same coin. It's important to understand them because I think that they help explain the why. And so when your directors come down and they ask you why you're wasting all your time on social media, hopefully maybe it gives you at least a little bit of an answer to go back to them and saying, we're trying to get our brands, our products, our services discovered, and we'll save a lot of money from traditional media. And so that's a little bit of the why. But the how is also different because I think there's a shift that's needed in the way that we think about digital marketing. Not necessarily what we're doing, not necessarily the activities that we're doing, but a change in our mindset, in our purpose. And the most important shift is this. We are all in the publishing business now, the magazine business. We need to start thinking less like pure marketers with a set of activities and more like editors-in-chief of our own magazine. Your accountancy service website is now a personal or business finance magazine. Your website no longer has visitors, it has readers. You're trying to build an audience and increase your readership and not necessarily drive traffic, right? So you need to think about the content you're producing for your readers. Do they want to hear all the time about how great your magazine is? Is that why you read a magazine? Because they're just constantly talking about how great their journalists are and how awesome their office is and all the other kind of things. It just doesn't happen that way. The magazine is a great paradigm, a great metaphor for this type of new type of marketing. And it's not just about creating more content. There's plenty of that. It's about how you think about the content you're producing. Focus in on your target market. You want to educate, nurture, inform, and entertain them so that they come back for more. You need to change your website. I used to think that really this was just a mindset change and the actual physical layout of your website doesn't need to change, but I think that isn't the case anymore either. I think that there are things you can do for your website that can help promote this type of approach. You need to make sure that all of that content is discoverable. You can sell on your website, of course, but you sell around the edges, not in the content. People are tired of those overt marketing messages these days. And really stop the stream of consciousness type of blogs. You know, oh, what's on my mind today? What am I thinking about? What are my attitudes? You know, you really need to turn that around to thinking about how magazines lay out their content and their blogs and do something similar. They have features, and they have departments, and they have sections, and you need to think about the same kind of thing. As I said a minute ago, there's plenty of content, terabytes of the stuff. Google's Eric Schmidt recently said that there's as much content created every 2 days now as we did in all of human history up until 2003. So every 2 days we're creating as much content as we did for a few thousand years. All right? So you want your readers coming back for more. Just squirting out lots of content just doesn't work. You need to make sure that they can trust your content and they want to read your next segment, your next blog. A guy named Doug Kessler from Velocity Partners produced this really nice SlideShare stack called CRAP, the single biggest threat to B2B content marketing. I really recommend go to SlideShare and look for it. It's excellent. It's an excellent piece of content. In particular was this slide that says, and it's about becoming a great content brand. It's a similar sort of message which I'm trying to get across now. A great content brand is a brand that's famous for producing intelligent, useful, and entertaining content that's always worth consuming, right? These are the things you normally would have thought about magazines doing. But this world now exists in your commercial venture. Your business needs to produce this sort of content now too. Because becoming a trusted source for content, becoming a great content brand, or becoming a magazine will actually create advocates and evangelists and build loyalty, and it also brings attention to your main products and services, right? It actually shines a spotlight on your main products and services. In the same way that if you squirt out inferior content, weak content, you're actually going to drive people away from your site, from your brand. Right? It is not, people I hear it all the time talking about it being an arms race. There is some truth to that, but at the end of the day, it's not a low quality arms race. You need to get content out there that people want to read and want to consume. Otherwise, it's just going to have a diminishing set of returns in terms of traffic and conversions and everything else. In our industry, here's some examples of what I think are great content brands. HubSpot in particular, they're very, very good at their content. It comes at me, it's really useful, really well researched, and it comes at me from lots of different angles, blogs, tweets, email. And sometimes you forget that they sell a product as well, perhaps, but at the end of the day, their content and their content marketing strategy has actually delivered tremendous results, commercial gain for them as a business. SEO Moz in our industry and Marketo, and I'm sure several of the other guys here today are doing similar sort of things. And so the main thing here is that it all starts with content. And when I'm talking about content marketing, I'm talking about commercially neutral content. The pages on your site that talk about how great you are as a business, they have their place, but I call that sales copy, not content or not content marketing. The litmus test for content marketing is, would someone want to share it or not? When was the last time you shared a really great About Us page to your friends or your followers on Twitter? It just doesn't happen, right? So content marketing, you need to make sure before you start writing that great blog, you got to think, would someone want to share this or not? That's what content marketing is about. And you need to focus on your target audience. Think less about you. Be the buyer. Start to answer the questions that they are answering, that they are asking, and perhaps even anticipate the questions that they are asking. You need to be authoritative, of course. You want to build a brand around a particular topic, so be authoritative. You need to be in it for the long haul. Content marketing is a drip feed marketing. It's not going to be an overnight success necessarily. Having said that, quite frequently with content marketing, a good infographic or a well-timed piece can really get some tremendous short-term gains as well. And you absolutely need to be passionate. If you don't care about what you're writing, why should anybody else? Right? So get angry. And you should always choose original content over curated content if you can. You want to be the source of that content that's getting shared on the social networks. What's the point really of just retweeting everybody else's original content, right? However, don't overlook the benefits of curation. If you become the go-to guy for your particular niche, then that has benefits as well. And some platforms, if you look at Pinterest, it's pure curation, right? That's what it's all about. But it has been proven to deliver some serious conversion numbers for e-commerce sites. And so if it all starts with content, then it all gets found by SEO. And SEO is constantly evolving, but it still works. Forget about all these SEO is dead type of sort of memes that go around. SEO still works. You just need to run with the times and evolve. In particular, one of the most important things that SEO does is it fixes the problems on a site that's preventing all of your content from being found. But Google, they have algorithm changes quite frequently, and there have been a couple recently that have been very well publicized. I'm sure everybody's heard about Panda and Penguin. You can't talk to an SEO company without hearing about Penguin, as we like to collectively call them. But let me boil it down for you. Those releases are primarily about two things. First, content, right? Google looked and they created a great deal of technology, and they put human reviewers, and they realized or they made a point of the fact that good quality original content is a way of separating the wheat from the chaff. Right? It's a way of getting rid of spammy, low-quality websites. If you have original content on your website, then you must at least be in the game for those particular key phrases. If you don't, forget it. Right? So content is a big part. That came in various forms, but at the end of the day, content is at the heart of that thing. The second is around people, and that the authority of the people, the author, the curator, the sharer of this content, can sometimes have as much impact as the authority of the website itself, right? So in other words, SEO is influenced by content and social. And as I mentioned earlier, search isn't going anywhere, and I have some stats for you to prove that. So here's a study from 2011 of 500 B2B and B2C marketers, and they were asked which channel, they were only given the choice of 3, SEO, PPC, and social. Which of those 3 channels has the greatest influence on lead generation for them? As you can see here, that SEO, and this is only 18 months ago old, SEO was the largest for both groups. B2C shows an increase in PPC and social naturally, but SEO is the largest for lead generation. Forrester Research did a study, and what they looked at was all the different channels, marketing channels, and they wanted to know which had the most influence on the buying cycle, in particular 3 phases: awareness, consideration, and purchase, right? And this was for an offline electronic retailer. So no, we're not even talking about e-commerce here. We're talking about an offline electronic retailer, and search had the greatest influence for all three areas of the buying cycle, above and beyond others, including TV. And SEO is all about the long tail now. The world of what I call the fat head, if you have long tail, the opposite of a long tail is a fat head, I guess. Fat head or generic keyword SEO is over, right? In fact, the harder you work to try and get a ranking for a very narrow set of generic keywords, the harder it becomes to do so. In fact, you potentially would be punished for doing so, because you might be seen as being over-optimized, right? So it's all about the long tail. People have been talking about the long tail for years, but now that's what it's all about. That is the game, and content works really well for that. Social media does as well, right? So relatively low competing pages, relatively low traffic perhaps, but there's a great deal of them, and generally they tend to be higher converting and more qualified types of leads. And so if it all starts with content, it all gets found by SEO, it all gets shared and discussed on social, and actually adds credibility through social as well. And the main thing here to realize is that when most people think about social, they think about very specific networks. They think about Facebook and Twitter and perhaps Google Plus and maybe perhaps LinkedIn. And they think about their friends and followers and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, what you guys need to realize when you're thinking about your social strategy is that social is not a platform. The web is being fundamentally rebuilt around people, all right? The web used to be all about documents and images and PDFs and all that kind of websites, and that is still there, but everybody's realized that doesn't mean as much as the people. Google's realized that it's more difficult to spam a search engine if you have the authenticity of the real people sharing and the real people writing and all that kind of stuff, right? But beyond that, social is more about getting people, the humanizing of the web into all aspects of the internet. So turning your business into this new publishing powerhouse, right, this magazine, requires these three elements, these three tactical channels, if you like, in digital marketing. Technical SEO on its own no longer works in isolation. It only gets you so far. The days of SEO working just on its own, in isolation, as a silo, have long gone. SEO fixes problems, right? But without content and social, it's not going to go anywhere. And content on its own goes nowhere. If you write a blog and no one reads it and no one can find it, does it even exist, right? Philosophy 101 maybe. And social without content is really just a great big conversation. It's good to talk, but it's probably better to have something to talk about. And content in its various forms are the great lubricant of the social world, right? So all three, they work fairly well on their own, less so these days, but they work really well together, right? Exponential results. You can get results from SEO in low quality low quality keywords or low competitive keywords without doing the things that most people traditionally associate with SEO, link building and all this kind of stuff. So just with content and just with social, you can get rankings, right? This is the new dimension. So basically, this is my session. I want everybody to realize that search, to think about search and discovery. Think about these are not platforms, they are buying behaviors, right? It's how people find your products and services. And we need to start to shift to become more like a publisher, more like a magazine. And we need to try and do that in every way. We need to think about editorial calendars. We need to think about how we actually lay out our information and how we market ourselves to those people, because people are doing that research earlier. They need to find you. If you want to influence them earlier in the buying cycle, if you want to nurture them earlier in the buying cycle, then you need to engage with them early in the buying cycle. And if you don't do it, then your competitors will, right? And that by combining SEO and content marketing and social media marketing, that is the most effective way of achieving that sort of success. And that's me. All right. Thank you.